Power State Neighborhood Watch.
Welcome to the Power State Neighborhood Watch. I'm your host Grant, and joining me as ever are Matt.
Hello.
And Graham.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about Doctor Who's first return to Earth in the very first series in 2005, Aliens of London. So to kick us off, a little bit of information. Aliens of London were written again as ever by Russell T Davies, and first-time director for this, returning director in fact, Keith Boak. The episode was first broadcast 16th of April 2005 and with a consolidated ratings factor of 7.63 million. So, to get us started, gentlemen, your initial thoughts. I hand you over to Matt first.
I found it quite hard to come up with initial thoughts for this one, bizarre though that is, perhaps because we've done the initial story and we've gone back in time and forward in time. It just, in reflection, it feels like the show's setting its stall out a bit more because it's got a real combination of action and fear and comedy, which I think is how I'd have described most of the new series, whereas I think the old one didn't necessarily know it was doing the comedy sometimes.
Yeah. And Graham, how did you feel about it?
I've always had mixed feelings about this. When I first watched it, I thought, it's fine, a bit silly in places, but it's fine. And I've gone through periods of really not wanting to watch it again. But having watched it this time, I did quite enjoy it actually. But it's just a bit too silly in places to really. It breaks up what could have been quite a sinister, hurt to hear like Invasion with a Twist story. It ended up a little bit of a promo for Sarah Jane Adventures, really. I don't even know if it was mooted at that point, but that's the tone it had.
Oh, I can definitely see that in retrospect. Definitely can see that. I mean, Graham, I think I'm very much in the same boat with you that I wasn't particularly looking forward to going back to this one. So I remember feeling a little bit let down at the time. I know we've talked about previously the series finding its feet and trying to find that golden tone that will carry it through the next few years of setting out what this incarnation of Doctor Who is going to be like and what kind of stories and what kind of humour and what kind of horror we're going to expect. So I remember this one being, compared to the last 2 weeks, a little bit of a step backwards. But I was pleasantly surprised going into this, like how much I enjoyed it. I mean, I definitely feel with 20 years hindsight, I appreciate it a lot more than I initially did.
I do think you have to ignore some silliness. There's nothing wrong with putting some comedy in Doctor Who.
Of course
I think
not.
it was just a little bit base, the humour in this. It's fast.
Yes.
Really, isn't it? That's the joke.
Yes.
It's there for the kids, isn't it?
Yeah. I've got no problem. I mean, I was a parent watching this. I've got no problem with Doctor Who pitching it at kids every few episodes. No problem with that. But I'm never going to be really into that episode if they do that. Because I'm not. I am in many ways, but not in that way. So, I'm looking at this episode as what it could have been rather than what it is.
So we open very much like we did in Rose with a really lovely panning shots bringing us in over the Powell estate, and filming this back to back with Rose, it really does feel like we have arrived the morning after the night before. That this could almost, not that I think we ever should, but if you were to cut out the last two episodes, the continuity would feel almost perfect between the two. We're getting that final piece of the the mythology of the series, that the TARDIS will occasionally be bringing us back home to check in with Rose's secondary cast. Nice little bit of exposition for everyone at home, the Doctor laying out, oh yeah, this is, one of the benefits of time travel. I can literally take you away for a week and you'll be back home in time for breakfast the next morning.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the fact that it gets it so completely wrong. That also gives us a little bit of a setup of what's to come. The Doctor does aim for tomorrow morning, but he'll get next year instead.
So yeah, we get what I think is one of the best cold openings to the series, with Rose walking back in like she's just had just back from a night out. She's talking about staying over at Shireen's. Why are you looking so shocked, Jackie? Get the kettle on. I've stayed out before. And we just get that. I love we're intercutting between Jackie looking like she's seen a ghost, Rose noticing the piles and piles of flyers and posters where she's, showing her missing presumed dead, and the Doctor just seeing that poster on the estate and pelting it up the stairs.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's funny, but it's also horrific.
Yeah, it's just the emotions you can see running through Camille Kaduri's face. Her presumed dead daughter has just walked back in, all but asking her for a cup of tea and toast and to put the telly on. It's a real. We'll jump ahead. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think this is a really good episode for Camille Kaduri, who didn't have too much to do in the last time we saw her, but I think she will definitely come into her own later on in this episode.
Agreed. Yeah.
And yeah, so the Doctor's little. Oh, by the way, it's 12 months. Got it a bit wrong. Sorry. It's a nice sting to end that intro on. So yeah, Jackie Tyler's emotions in this. In about 30 seconds straight, she goes from shock to anger to concern, with that policeman who appears to have popped out of nowhere, waiting, and they've nicely waited for him to be in the room before Jackie even begins to start asking any questions about where her daughter's been. I did pick up on that this time before. That's a little bit of a dramatic stretch. I know getting a policeman was a little easier in 2005 than it is today, but I did find it a bit strange that Jackie waited for him to be in the room before she asked, "Where the hell have you been?"
It's like Tegan meeting, what's he called, in Amsterdam. And he says, I'll tell you about it when we get there. So it's like, what did you talk about on the train into the city?
It's a very good point. I hadn't thought of it like that. Yeah, so I do quite like the dialogue up on the roof. 900 years of time and space travel, and I've never been smacked by somebody's mum.
The "You're so gay" is an interesting one.
Yeah. That's the first time I picked up on that line. I don't know whether it's just because that was more acceptable 20 years ago.
I think it's more acceptable then. Yeah, I think so.
I remember it's still causing some contention. People were definitely talking about it. When this was going out, I can remember some fans being upset at it. But yeah, my note here says it's very of its time. It was unfortunately a time where you could use it as a pejorative. Especially. I kind of give Rose a pass just because she's a 19-year-old girl from South London. It's sadly just something that was part of the vernacular at the time.
It's interesting that we've hit that point in New Who where even not all of New Who is acceptable anymore.
No.
Are we going to put Rose in the bin with the first Doctor now? That's the politically incorrect pile.
Well, I don't think he ever actually says anything politically incorrect, does he? It's just his views have become known, the actor.
He talks about smacked bottoms. That's probably the worst of it, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's what Granddads did in 1964, didn't it? It was just a bit bizarre when Carol Ann Ford was 24 or something for him to say it. You know?
I don't know. It makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, I mean, we all know Russell T Davies well enough now as a writer to know this is not the author's views seeping in or anything.
No, and Russell T Davies as a gay man is writing what a council estate girl would say, not necessarily what he'd say himself.
Yeah. He might have said it himself.
Yeah, to be honest, I bet he has.
Yeah, I'm sure of it, yeah.
With his mates, maybe not on BBC One at prime time, but it's an interesting one because it just marks out how old this show is, which is the reason we're kind of talking about it, isn't it?
I can see him saying it to himself first thing in the morning in the mirror.
You're so gay. But that with a burst of pride and a swagger.
To start the day. But the big focus of this, I mean, I love... There's something wonderfully comic about Rose having this wonderful little speech about how her and the Doctor have shared so many sights and sounds and experiences that nobody else on Earth could ever comprehend what they've got up to. And then a dirty great spaceship comes flying above her head, horns and lights and noises and everything, blasting smoke, and Christopher Ecclestone just bursting into laughter. It's just so infectious. It's a wonderful bit of comic timing.
Well, of course, he knows just how many people there are on Earth who know all about aliens.
Yeah.
Time travel, what have you as well. So he's indulging her a little bit as well.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is the shot that was all over the trailers, all over the promotion for the series. It's an absolutely beautiful shot by the... And I was surprised because in my head I thought the spaceship crashing into Big Ben was CGI, but I completely forgot that it's entirely model work.
Yeah.
And it's just such... I think if I was to sum up Doctor Who for the last 20 years in an image, it's that the unearthly meeting contemporary London. I think it's such a it's just such a quintessential Doctor Who moment. This is something that stood out for me because I never noticed it in the first broadcast. I was watching with the subtitles on, and they've managed to dub in on the subs some of the background chatter from when Rose and the Doctor are down in the street.
Oh.
And there's a taxi driver. It just says, "Taxi driver, it's got to be Ken Livingstone."
I remember that. You say it, yes.
And I've just got a little political next to it. It felt like it feels very David Brent.
Well, taxi drivers always hate Labour mayors. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I particularly like the shot of it diving into the water myself. But afterwards on Doctor Who Confidential, they were describing how they did that. And they actually just purchased like a water coming up against the camera. They just purchased that. And
really?
Inserted it into the shot. Yeah, which I just found fascinating how they could just put this stuff together. Because it's a bit like stock footage, except that never properly worked because of the changing grain and lighting and everything. Yeah. So it's interesting how easier it is to do some of this stuff now. I mean, I was looking at it thinking, well, they probably had to film that in a tank and all the rest of it. No, they just bought the thing. Why reinvent the wheel,
So we're down on the street and London is descending into anarchy and chaos, and this feels like a far more realistic and down-to-earth reaction than most alien invasions we've seen before in Doctor Who. I mean, going back to the classic series, I mean, it was generally some soldiers, some bureaucrats, and maybe a local farmer who noticed the invasion and got a bit upset by this. But this is all of a sudden Doctor Who's walked into the West Wing. We're getting, the Prime Minister is declaring a national emergency. We're hearing that flights in America have been grounded. That the president's coming out onto the main lawn to give a speech to the press. And I guess this might be because we're now in a post 9/11 world that we kind of have to show a reaction to how something big crashing into a major metropolitan area would go down.
Yeah. I think BBC that's more worldly and cynical since those days as well. Might have been a bit patriarchal in the past. They didn't want to show Britain breaking down because the aliens have landed, which I think is exactly what would happen, personally.
Oh, definitely, I would. I'll be running around screaming. But in dramatic terms, we're not only post 9/11, we're post Auton invasion from a year ago, before Rose disappeared, aren't
Yes.
we? Almost to the day, we have another alien invasion. I've got a feeling they passed off the Autons as like a weird incident and not an alien invasion, because I don't think they knew about the Nestine under the Thames, did they?
I think they were trying to paint it like the sarin attack in Japan all those years ago.
Going from memory, I'm sure the unit website that launched after this episode came out as part of the viral marketing campaign for the series, I think it does have a page, or like you can read some encrypted emails where like the unit cover story they're passing out is that it was some chemical inside shop dummies that caused them to expand under heat that gave the impression of movement and then exploded, which accounted for all the deaths. So, national emergency, riots, but nobody on the estate actually seems to be all that bothered. It seems to be business as usual.
There's some people leaning out the window with "Welcome Aliens" on the banner, isn't there? It's like it's an excuse for a party on the council estate. I get that.
It is. And is this? I was trying to think. Is this supposed to be? I can't remember when Rose was set. If this is supposed to be like a Saturday, because Rose, it feels like it was meant to be at the weekend, and I can't decide if this is supposed to be a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. But I did notice that whenever we do go to the power estate, every single shop seems to be shut all of the time. There's a post office and there's a youth centre I can see, and everything's always got its shutters down. It feels like it exists in a permanent Sunday afternoon.
You're hyper-focusing again, Grant.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, I just...
If we don't, we ain't got nothing to talk about. It's all been said, so,
I've got plenty of notes.
I've got notes here. This is the first appearance of the evergreen Mal Loop, who will be our American correspondent through the rest of the Russell T Davies run. And I think they do change her name because she's a bad wolf clue, isn't she? Mal Loop is something in Spanish or French.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't notice that.
But I only really noticed that this time round because I've just again finished watching Star Cops, and she pops up in that again as a young American journalist. I literally, in the very last episode, I watched it again last night, and I thought, I recognise her. In 20 years' time, she's going to be in Doctor Who.
Doing the same job.
20 years later as well, because she was back again, wasn't she?
Yeah, and she has not aged a different. She's not aged. She looks.
She doesn't look that different. Yeah.
No, she's looking very well.
She's a time traveller.
That's it. That's the explanation we're going with.
There's obviously a plot here somewhere. Big Finish will be covering at some point.
This is something I noticed, and I think it's a really nice thematic little thing that will tie into the Slivian later. That the first couple of scenes, we don't see the alien from inside the UFO at all. We just see a shroud that, admittedly, looks far too big for what we eventually see, being lifted out of the Thames, and then when it's in the hospital, we only ever see people's reaction to it from underneath, and from that point on, it's in a freezer, awaiting dissection. But that's going to be something that's going to come up right at the end of this episode as well. We don't see the threat. It's always obscured.
Oh, that was very traditional for first episodes, wasn't it? The cliffhanger was the reveal.
The shadowed claw.
Yeah, this is different. It's you do get the impression that they are deliberately shielding us from what it is. It made me think at the time that this is someone we've seen before. Maybe it's a returning monster. There might be a Zygon under there.
That's a good point. It feels very Zygonish, doesn't it?
I was really hoping there weren't going to be returning monsters myself. Daleks.
Yeah. I mean, by the fourth episode, I was kind of, I want to see something. But I think you're right. Not being returning monster was better.
One Dr. Toshiko Sato appears. I mean, I loved seeing Tosh turn up because one thing I love about Doctor Who is I love a good old-fashioned perplexed British scientist, and I think she's kind of our first one. She's well, from what we can tell, she's a medical doctor who's been drafted in to cut up an alien she's never seen before, and I'm crowning her the Doctor Who Revival's first honorary baffled professor. She's joining a noble...
Torch.
Yes.
Yeah, I liked it. I was waiting for the inevitable when does the alien come alive again? Because I think we were being primed for that.
Yes, definitely. I can even remember watching at the time for the first time around. We're all familiar with the tropes. That's what's going to happen. They wouldn't be bothering to show us this if there wasn't going to be something to go on with the body later on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at this point, this is when we finally get to the meat of the story, and we cut to Downing Street, and we get one of our first real-world cameos with Andrew Marr appearing live on television to slag off an MP, Mr. Joseph Green MP, and I've got a few notes here that just stuff that maybe you two could answer. So I know it's a conceit of the story, but it just feels really incongruous to me that there are no other cabinet MPs in London at any one time who could take over, aside from a relatively low level. I think it's the Sugar Importation Committee he's on.
Well, that's we're being primed there, aren't we? Because Andrew Marr mentions it, and it's like that's a bit odd. And of course, he's there because he's one of the Slovene. I thought there was just a mystery being set up here, and later on it was solved in that they've probably all been abducted or killed.
Yes,
because the Slovene plan was going into action.
There is a line later on where they do say they were supposed to be organising emergency transport, helicoptering in the cabinet, but the transport's supervisor was a Slovene, so he's not bothered to do it. So I do and I do have a question here. There's no other MPs in London, so how come Harriet Jones? How come she hasn't been given an emergency position? Because I don't just feel really sorry for her. They're making the Sugar chairman.
Well, was she on the same party?
Oh, she's obviously a Labour MP. Yeah. She's like an identikit Labour MP.
Let's face it. She's a mix of Mo Molam, Harriet Harman.
Yeah. Tessa Jow.
That kind of. She doesn't even say she's hardly one of the babes, just a loyal backbencher. So she's this dedicated little socialist who's probably been in the party since the late 70s.
Well, she was quite a new MP as well, wasn't she?
I don't get that feeling. I always got the feeling that she's almost a Jeremy Corbyn type figure, like someone who's been the local MP because she served the community for 30 odd years, and it's just such a lovely little place. They've never thought to elect anyone else but her.
She's probably been there since '87. So.
It may have been all the stuff with how pleased she was to introduce herself as an MP that made me think she was a brand new one. But
I definitely get that. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know. I'm just kind of. I get impressions. I miss a lot of words. But no, I mean, she herself was quite an entertaining character.
Yeah, I fell in love with her instantly. She's just, she is very much an idealised left-wing politician of that era, of what you kind of want. Someone who's not some Oxbridge toff. She's far more concerned with local issues. She's a little bit posh, but in that lovely kind of way that we do so well.
She reminds me of, is it Amelia Descartes from Seeds of Doom, and the older lady in Stones of Blood? It's like a dotty old lady who you suspect probably solves crimes.
Don't know about dotty old lady.
Well, some of them are quite shrewd, but yeah, they're like there are maybe let's call them lovable grannies. There's a few in Doctor Who, and I think she's part of a tradition.
This is the point in the episode, and I'm sure you'll both agree, where it takes a little bit of a nosedive because we get our very first fart.
Well, I actually thought the first two were pretty funny. And then the third, and then it's like there's one that happens and you're just not expecting it, and it's just like quiet. Oh, did you fart then? And that was funny. And then there's one where it kind of, the next one, I think it's actually shocks the guy who's farting, the guy, the sugar guy, and he's like, "Oh, blimey!" And that made me laugh. None of the others after that, I was just that was enough.
Well, it's there for a purpose because it's not going to be there for any other reason. So it's telling us something about these particular people. But it's very much. Is it a new series trope or is it a Russell T Davies trope? The repeated joke that is repeated too many times.
Yes, and I hope you both were paying attention because I did count the number of farts in this episode, and there will be a test at the end.
Oh, well, I'm going to wait and see what Matt says and go one higher. It's the scene where all the Savine get together and they realise they're kind of in control now, and they start to enjoy the fact they're in control, and they start mucking about and enjoying the farting. That's when it got too much for me. It was just too silly.
See, I don't mind that bit so much because it's more in context.
These are supposed to be hardened criminals, and they're like, "Oh, I've done another fart. Isn't it funny?" It's like, do they have a fart culture on their planet then? Maybe I'm getting too deep into it. I just.
Well, I thought they were pitched to be like naughty children, partly to the children in the audience. So it all fits together, It's like kids in charge.
Yeah, I've got no problem with doing something like this for the kids. I just wish they'd gone sinister with it. But that's not fair of me to want. We just had an episode that I absolutely loved because it was gothic horror. I'm not going to begrudge some 7 or 8 year olds a bit of fun.
What was the Judy Gardner, wasn't it? Judy Gardner said the tone of Doctor Who was going to be City of Death. Because that was one of the stories she'd watched, and that was, to her, the most appealing one for the public. And I think this is the first story that really, really does that.
Yeah, it's just a bit too puerile for me. But then, like I say, I'm a middle-aged guy watching this. Even then, I was almost middle-aged. But and I had a kid with me watching it. It was laughing his head off. So
that's what matters.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this one's for you. I had last week. I had my gothic horror. And it was still a good story around that silliness that it did kind of taint it for me a little bit. But if you watch this just as a isolated first part, there isn't that much silliness in it. It's obviously the first act is all the domestic return, and then you've got all this like what's going on and being invited into the government, and then the third act is a bit silly, but there's not that much of it. So as a first part, I think overall the tone is quite good in this.
It is. We go back to the Powell estate, and the Doctor's stepped outside for a bit of air, and we have that nice sort of interaction with him out on the balcony. I've just got two notes for this scene. One, immediately outside of Jackie's flat, there are 3 different wanted posters for Rose. So how did she not notice those when she was coming up the stairs?
What? Who? Oh yeah, that was she. Yeah. Like when she first went up there.
Yeah,
because she was rushing to get home.
No, this is just me because I was.
Maybe there's a backstairs.
Just upset that she didn't see them.
Also, I know this was a big talking
He pushed it out, putting them up because he didn't know she was
Maybe.
And I know this is a big talking point with me about Billy Piper's jeans in the very first episode. But we're back on. Rose gets her first contemporary change of clothes for 4 weeks. She's still got the same amazing parachute jeans on, but now she's paired it with. I wonder. She's looking very 80s. You know, because I think we were just about heading into an 80s fashion revival at this time. She's got a amazing oversized neon pink tee with a very lovely white faux leather jacket.
A faux leather jacket?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to wind back now. I never noticed the leather jacket.
It's
impression of a big pink hoodie.
It's. I don't know if this is me being slightly bored with the episode and wanting to, and being fascinated by dissecting the fashions of my youth.
This is kind of your era, isn't it? This is like you were young then. This is when fashion mattered, and fitting in or not fitting in. And it's like for me, it's like everything's looked the same since '93.
I mean, I was curious to see how they dressed the companions in New Who. Perhaps not in as much detail as you've noticed them, but there was always a bone of contention of mine of the old series. It's like, okay, so they tried to make Zoe look vaguely futuristic, but the idea that Sarah Jane would have something different from Bieber or Bus Stop every week was stretching credulity, and to actually see some real people who had clothes that you would see reoccurring from time to time, as normal people do, and not a new outfit every week. And also not like that 80s business where they never change their clothes ever, which is, and they're rather contrived clothes to begin with. So the idea that Turlough, who hated being an exile at a school, never takes his school uniform.
No, yeah. And we just watch it get increasingly grungier and grungier.
Yeah.
In fact, that ties me into... I've got just one note here, going back to Rose's outfit. Rose Tyler, pastel emo. But I've also noticed here that they've got quite prominently Starman by David Bowie playing in the background. And I was under the impression that, Bowie music was quite difficult to secure the rights to. So I don't know if, if the BBC's had some deal in place, maybe.
I can answer this one. They have clearly got Hot Hits 1972 2. Complete with scantily clad lady on the front. Cover version so good you can't tell them from the originals.
Wow.
You're aware of the Hot Hits phenomena, are you, Grant? And the top of the box.
Yes. I've just been...
Every home have one.
At this point, Mickey makes his grand reappearance in the series, coming out onto his balcony to have a sniff at his trainers.
I love that. It was a lovely little character bit, that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, checking to see if they were dry. That's quite nice. I liked it. And going to you first, Matt, how do you feel about Noel Clarke's performance as Mickey this time round?
I really like it. It's he's justifiably pissed off, and he really plays it well, and you feel for him, and you can sense his frustration in that, first of all, Rose dumps him, and now Jackie's essentially turned everybody against him. And much as we like Jackie, you can just imagine how it happened.
Yeah, that would have been a force to bear, wouldn't it?
Mm.
No, I'd agree with that. Totally. Yeah, and just to add that there is still a nice edge of comedy to it as well. There's that anger, and I mean, not at the same time, obviously. But there's a few nice touches in it with his characterization at that point, and it's kind of still This is the same block as Rose. Yeah, you said. Yeah, and it's the same. He's playing it the same, tonally the same as he played Rose. It's maybe not with all the gangster poses in the Beatles so much, but there are. I can. He's timed it. I'm thinking now that maybe he's turned it down now. Thinking more of
I was going to say, I think we're at a sort of halfway point. He's definitely toned it down. I think he's far less of a cartoon figure, but he's still got a few moments of
that I'm seeing.
Yeah, he's definitely got a few moments of slapstick comedy. That's still the Mickey of old we knew.
Yeah, the way, when he first hears the TARDIS noise and he runs towards the TARDIS and just slams into the metal wall.
Yeah,
that was quite broad.
Again,
and
the way he styles it off afterwards.
Yeah, that was very Mickey from Rose, but he didn't have any real weight to his part in Rose, where he did in this.
Yeah.
There was reason for him to be angry, as Matt said.
Yeah, he says... Sorry, Matt, go on.
It's very Mickey until he discovers his sort of... his inner strength in the way that Rose discovers hers, I think. Because he's less of a comedy character later on.
Agreed. It's... going back to something you were saying, Graham, much as I love Jackie Tyler, I can just imagine how vicious she could be if she's got a bone to pick with you. She has a capacity to be an utter monster, and they all but say that he's clearly had dog shit pushed through his letterbox, and possibly even worse. It seems like if Jackie whispers in the right ear, Mickey could be getting something a lot more deadly coming through. Is he getting petrol and matches pushed through?
Yeah, totally. She's a council estate mum, single mum, protecting her daughter.
We cut back to Harriet Jones back at Parliament, and she's just so lovely. That she's bringing the Prime Minister's assistant a cup of tea. Not being allowed into the cabinet office. Damn, you've seen through my cunning plan. She's just, I just fell in love with her all over again. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely adorable.
Pictures it absolutely right, I think.
Yes. She just wants to drop off a file about the funding for cottage hospitals because her mum's currently laid up in hospital with something or other. And yes, there is UFOs flying over Westminster, but she's been promised her meeting, and by golly, she's going to get it.
Well, this is it, isn't it? The world carries on despite these big events, and there are still things going on a human scale that have to be done.
But I like the way it's the most important thing in her life at the moment. Whatever's going on outside, this hospital is the most important. That's what you want your local MP to be doing, isn't it? Just keep going. Don't let them off the hook just because it's there will always be bigger fish to fry. Always. So you have to stick to your guns, don't you, really? But it's quite ineffectual the way she does it, which is quite cute.
Yes, it's she's just so charming. But I've got here that she's got a bit of Sarah Jane pluckiness to her. She shows the right amount of charm and a doggedness to get into the cabinet, and like Sarah Jane, she's got a tendency to stick her nose into things, and while she's there, she has a sneaky look at the emergency protocols. Moving on from Harriet, having a nosy about in the cabinet offices, we finally catch up with the Doctor. He's over at Albion Hospital and manages to walk in on an entire room of squaddies. And I notice a couple of squaddies in this room. They're all smoking cigarettes, but they're all completely unlit. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'll put this over to you first, Graham. I mean, how did you feel about the Doctor walking into this scene and immediately taking command of soldiers?
Well, I enjoyed that scene. The fact, I mean, they all drew their guns on him, and he was being a little bit casual at that point. But the moment the siren went off, and he like Delta formation, go, and they immediately just fell in. They recognised an order, didn't they? And it's like, that's his kind of unit knowledge coming out there, isn't it? And so I liked it from that point of view, because what could have been a tedious "who are you?" take you to the boss and all this sort of kind of stuff scene was like just spun on its head with that, just giving out that order. I like that. It's efficient writing and a fun aspect to his character that he can do that when he needs to. He can lead soldiers, which he's quite often anti-soldier, isn't he? But he's got that in his character.
See, for me, it just felt wrong. The idea that happened at all. And to my mind, it would have been, if you're going to have an unrealistic scene, just don't bother having it at all. We didn't need to see them before one of them shot the pig. It could have been a case of Tosh calls out to them, or one of them rushes in when we hear the noise of the pig running up the corridor or whatever. Also, one of those cliches, which is just it's not just Doctor Who these days. The sound of all the safety catches coming off, it's such a tiresome cliche now. It's in Big Finish every other week. It's just, it really irritates me. It's just one of those things. The other thing that irritates me is the little click on fluorescent tubes going on now.
That's another trait. That's, that hum and the ping ping that comes on.
Yeah. This stuff is nice little detail the first couple of times, and then it's like, where's the hum, clink, clink, clink?
There is some.
It's when you start recognising the same sound sequence that's just been dropped in by the editor. That's when it gets really annoying. Those sort of things. That's the same gun as last time, but that was the submachine gun. This is a pistol.
This is a Glock. This is no. I mean, there's some amazing Foley work going on here. I mean, like some of the times hearing the soldiers on the corridor, it's like as they walk along. I did wonder, the Doctor being able to walk into this group of soldiers. I know you said it was a bit of a hark, almost unit-like, but I wonder if this is tying into the hints that we've had that Doctor has until recently been a soldier in the Time War. That, he might be slightly more familiar with, the workings of a squaddy and, being slightly more comfortable, in a sense, with stepping into that role of the officer.
I mean, the Doctor's always had a bit of a hypocritical relationship with our forces, anyway. It's always been a case of, I'm going to attack you, but I'm also going to make use of you at the same time. So, but the whole idea of him pushing in and, suddenly just being able to give them orders, it just didn't ring true for me.
Okay.
But it was just useful for the plot,
Yeah.
As most things are that we have to pick holes in. There's a reason why they're there, really. It's either convenience or it was cheaper.
That's the very first scene to be filmed as well, them running down the corridor.
Oh.
How was it? I didn't know that.
Yes.
From Little Acorns.
So this pig buys it.
Yes, I mean, in the cold light of day, the pig outfit does look a little bit rubbish, but in the 30 seconds or so we're with it, I mean, I do feel a certain amount of emotion for it. You know, the doctor's it was scared. It was scared, and I like the touch of the doctor comforting the pig as he holds its trotter, or puts his hand to his face as he dies, and I think that's again encapsulates both the campness of Doctor Who cradling a dying rubber pig, but making us feel for it at the same time. I actually really liked it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all down to Ecclestone, I guess, really, isn't it? That you buy that because it is just a bit of rubber in his hands. But, sorry, let's move on.
Yeah, I thought it was very sad. Even perhaps unnecessary.
I suppose.
Yeah, it has a place in the plot, I guess, doesn't it? This is all part of Slivine's distraction plan, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I mean shooting it.
No, but that was the most dramatic way to kind of bring that to light, really, I guess, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming the Slivine assumed it would die in the crash, and the fact it was rescued probably came as a bit of an annoyance to them. Or maybe not, but that's what I kind of thought.
I kind of got the feeling that they didn't particularly care either way. I mean, it achieved that, if it survives, it gives them, the public and the military, something else to worry about. If it's something they end up just scraping off the wall, no bother.
Well, it gave them an excuse to lock down Downing Street and take control of it, didn't it?
To cap off the scenes at the hospital, I did pick up on, obviously they weren't thinking long term with the character of Tosh. She does have the line, "I thought that was what aliens look like," so I've just got a note next to it saying, "So you've not been working for Torchwood all that long then, have you?"
Well, maybe she hasn't,
Maybe.
I've seen nothing that doesn't mean she can be Tosh so far.
No. Yeah, so, and then we get the Doctor, again, doing one of the things he does best, disappearing on her while she's got her back turned. And by the speed between her turning around and the TARDIS vanishing, he must have sprinted back down that corridor absolutely silently.
That's been an ongoing thing over the years, though, hasn't it? That the Doctor's got sort of reserves of strength sometimes. Yeah. Or it's just dramatic license again.
It's the speed with which he shuts the door and the TARDIS immediately starts leaving.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of irritates me. That and you've got to walk over and program it.
That's always been a thing, isn't it? That it's always been a bit odd. That,
but I mean, there was one where the TARDIS starts taking off while Tom Baker's scarf is still shut in the door. He can't even reach the console. He's trapped. I know
it's the end of Revenge of the Cybermen, isn't it? I think.
Might be, yeah. It might be that one.
It's Sharda.
Indeed.
And it's a very good point. And one I have never considered before.
Back to the cabinet offices, and General Asquith, who's been our sort of proxy brigadier figure at this point, the bluff, no-nonsense military man who's walked in and taken charge of it and is desperately looking for something to shoot at, unfortunately gets his innards ripped out by the Slivine. And going back to what I was saying about we didn't see the pig, until it was absolutely vital to reveal it. We don't get to see the Slovene here. We only ever get to see Harriet Jones's reaction as she screams silently into her hand, and we get these awful, awful body noises of the general being literally torn from his skin. And it's a nice little bit of vague body horror again for Doctor Who.
Yeah, this is where I think this episode could have been a lot darker and a lot more sinister and a lot more up my street, without all the laughing and the joking that preceded this scene, which I suppose some might find that makes it more sinister because they were finding it fun rather than just doing it because they needed to do it. But
it's more sinister if they're laughing. You know, it's the big kids thing again.
But
it's a bit like what's the novel about them on the island?
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. I think less is more as well. I don't really want to see the gore. Less and less as I get older, funnily.
I was going to say, I roughly agree with Graham here. I mean, the Slovene are a little bit too camp, and I've just got written in big capital letters, shaking my booty, fuck off.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Annette Badland as an actress. She's absolutely fantastic in pretty much everything I've ever seen her do, but she just can't sell it. And I can see it in her eyes. She knows she can't sell it. And she wants.
Yeah. Think of the check.
Yeah, everyone's going to watch this. Nobody's going to watch this. There won't be a bunch of middle-aged men dissecting me in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I will say when she comes back in Boomtown, it's absolutely perfectly. But at this point,
yes,
it's too. But I think I would blame the writing more than these actors. This is like they've been told to do this, and
100%.
And this is the tone that they wanted, obviously. But it's not for me. I will again say I don't mind that it's not for me. It doesn't matter that they make episodes for different people, you know.
Yeah.
I guess they're still finding their way as well. It's not my cup of tea either, really, that sort of thing. But, I know that there are people who did enjoy it. And sometimes I think there's just that po-faced Doctor Who fan thing going on when we
Yeah. So we are back to the Doctor arriving at the Power Estate again, and Mickey introducing... Mickey, in a way, he really stitches the Doctor up here by dropping, needling Rose a little bit about he's left you, he's run off again and left you, and then also later, a little bit later on in the TARDIS, saying, "Oh, what, you thought this was the first time he ever came here? Nah, he's been messing around with our history for a long time." And I thought. And for once, I thought, I'm on Mickey's side a little bit here. The Doctor is unapologetic about making his life a living hell for the last year, and so I'm siding with Mickey a little bit here and giving him a pass to put the boot into the Doctor a bit.
Definitely, yeah. It's an easy bit of exposition to get a little window on the past of the Doctor as well for the new audience, I think. But I do like Jackie's culture shock moment where Mickey stitches the Doctor up to Rose and then suddenly there's Jackie in the background.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have to say anything.
Yeah, I love her going to sort of fight or flight mode here, and she runs away from this strangeness that she's seen. She's finally getting a little bit more of an explanation of where her daughter has been. She's not just been indiscriminately travelling. She's been pretty much abducted by a UFO, hasn't she? She's been literally abducted by aliens. We do cut back here all the way back to Downing Street again. So we've now got what we know as the Slovene are trying on General Asquith's form. And we get that little bit of comedy of them shoving the old flesh suit into the cupboard without taking a look, and inadvertently into Harriet Jones's arms, and she gets to cradle what is unfortunately a very fake rubbery looking suit, you know. But
I couldn't get. I wasn't sure, and I never have been up to this point. Whether are these rubber suits made to look like the people, or are these supposed to be the flesh of the people made into suits?
I think it's their actual flesh, and the implication is that they've eaten the contents of that flesh.
Yeah, I was never sure about that either.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose they're never going to be able to make it look real.
Well, my next note is that the Slovene bemoaning no longer being the transport secretary or whoever he is, that he's going to miss the fact that the guy had a wife, a mistress, and a young farmer. So that's not just a bit of, alien shagging. It's now, okay, we've got a nice little bit of bi-representation there at least. Yeah. So I presume the young farmer is a young, strapping farmer.
Yes. Well, I imagine that's what everyone assumed.
Yeah.
Putting it in the same breath as wife and mistress doesn't really have much out there, does it?
It's
It's
the rule of three, isn't
you're on a business trip, it's not all work, is it?
But it was probably in the constituency, wasn't it?
Yeah, more than likely. I do quite like that the Doctor being given the title of the ultimate expert in extraterrestrial affairs. It's a nice gig if you can get it, isn't it?
So have you reached units or other OTT retrieval of the Doctor yet?
Yes, because this is my very next note, which is unit, fucking finally, where have they been? Because, classic Who, they always seem to be the first on the scene and, right, we're in charge now, we're taking over. But they seem to have had their feet firmly up for most of this story.
Was there a Slovene... I can't think of the word now. Did they have a Slovene on the inside stopping them getting involved?
Possibly, but from what when we do see them on screen, they're all American servicemen and women. They're all in, Air Force and US Marine uniforms. So it always seems to be implying that they're an American organisation.
Did you notice he called them United Nations Task Force?
Yes. In fact, my very next note is, well, that's the last time there'll be United Nations.
Yeah. I'm assuming because he hadn't been updated at that point, but had the writers not decided to change it at that point?
As I understand it, there'd always been a gentleman's agreement that the UN were fine for the use of the name, but that kind of went away when the BBC set up a unit website for this series, which had United Nations plastered all over it, and they got a little bit worried that this website where you do a little bit of basic hacking and can pretend to fire nuclear missiles might be mistakenly believed to be a UN endorsed website.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So it could have just been possibly them using it once to kind of link it before they changed it, or it could have been that they hadn't set that website up at that point.
Yeah, as far as I understand, I think they only become unified. They use units for the rest of the Russell T Davies run, but I don't think they ever vocalise again what it stands for, and it only becomes unified when Kate Stewart first appears.
I thought I had her. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I remembered hearing it in that first season or second season at least, but my memory and facts are quite often a long way away from each other. So we'll see.
All I'm going to say is that my heart sank when the word unit was uttered, because I thought, got rid of the Time Lords. and now we've got unit back round our necks.
Yeah.
I didn't mind too much because we weren't going to be on Earth all the time, like the Pertwee era or anything. It's just maybe 2 or 3 times a season we might see him at most, but it does limit what story you get to tell. They've got to show up every time there's an alien incursion on Earth, doesn't it? Sometimes you just want something to happen out in the middle of nowhere where the unit aren't involved.
Yeah, I get the feeling the inclusion here in this episode is to preempt. Like I just said, I've been saying, where the fuck have Unit been through this entire episode?
Yeah.
And if they hadn't turned up, there would have been a litany of fans taking to the internet to decry, why isn't this a Unit episode?
Yeah, they would have had to say they would have been disbanded and then could never have used them at all.
Good.
Yeah.
I just think the Unit era is 1968 to 75. Can we move on? We just will never let anything go anymore, it seems.
So I do have a nice little note here. The Doctor does seem to be... the Doctor wanting to avoid Unit a bit is interesting. That it feels almost like... I did wonder when I was watching this, were they going to go somewhere with that? Is he now persona non grata with them? But no, it doesn't really
possibly
go
just a hangover from the fact that John Pertwee was never happy being part of Unit, because he was only there because he was exiled, wasn't it? He couldn't travel. So he's always very grumpy with them. But in the beginning couple of seasons at least, he didn't really want to be there. So maybe it's just a hangover, a reminder of his kind of standing with them. He's not really part of it, but he sometimes has to be.
Maybe he thought they were going to grab the TARDIS off him and keep him on Earth.
Which is something Torchwood did, so he might not have been far wrong. That's where it gets silly. I don't think, if we've got Unit, why do we need Torchwood?
Well, exactly.
We could have had Torchwood and not brought Unit back and said Unit was disbanded for the sake of...
That would have been my preference, yeah.
So at this point, the Doctor and Rose are spirited off to Downing Street, and we find the Doctor is going to be shepherded into the meeting of, the world's best brains on UFOs and spaceships and the military. And I do like Harriet just hovering around the fringes of this scene, because she's kind of picked up that the Doctor and Rose are some kind of alien experts, and she's very quick to see an opportunity to take Rose aside to find someone she can confide in. I really do like that.
Yes, very sharp. I thought that was. Yes, I liked that moment. I like the way she bursts into tears as well. It's Doctor Who finally dealing with the emotional effect on people, the things it puts them through.
Yeah. I agree. I've got nothing to add.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see such a pressure release go off in her, that because she must be running on fumes at this point. I mean, we assume she's been in Downing Street since at least 9-10 o'clock this morning, and it's gone midnight at this point.
Yeah.
So, and she's not had too much time to stop for a coffee or a snooze.
Well, she's effectively a fugitive as well, isn't she? Because she's not supposed to be there. She's hidden in the cupboard.
Yes.
No one's really, she's sort of floating around the edge of events. And now she knows stuff that would get her killed.
Yeah, she's absolutely terrified throughout this. Although my very next note does say that they spend an inordinate amount of time checking ID passes at the door to the room they're in, telling Rose and Harriet they don't have the authority to go through it. 5 seconds later, they walk through with absolutely nobody batting an eyelid.
Did they? I didn't really clock.
Yeah, it's the same door. Where the Doctor's being shepherded off to the meeting. There's a black paramilitary guard to one side, and obviously it leads out into the corridor. They're going one direction, they're going the other. But it just made me laugh when I noticed that. Well, they make a big deal like you can't go in there.
Yeah.
All right, in you go.
It's quite a lot of. It's quite hectic, isn't it? So I guess they made mistakes, but I'm not.
Yeah, there's always a lot happening in this story. There's always things happening in multiple locations.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
geography.
crisis, there's a panic happening, isn't it? I guess so. That's kind of what would be happening, but maybe not quite in the way that they're doing it.
Because even though the
Yes.
Doctor and Rose are at Downing Street now, we've still got the drama going on with Jackie, haven't we?
And Mickey's
Yes.
hiding in some bins at the moment, isn't he? Wasn't he hiding? He ran off when they came to pick the Doctor up. He was hiding behind some bins. I don't know where he is now.
Well, he's
gone home.
Flat, presumably.
Yeah, he's skulking about somewhere. I mean,
Because he plays a part in the next episode, doesn't he?
because he managed to run away from a load of soldiers and not get himself shot.
Yeah.
So I completely forgot that we solved the mystery of the dead Prime Minister with and it did actually make me jump a little bit. You know, when they go to open the cupboard and the dead body falls out.
Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten that was in this episode. I kept, even though I watched it, I thought it was in the next one. Yes, because I remember thinking, doesn't look like Tony Blair. I wonder. It was obviously supposed to be a fictional PM anyway. But.
So I was just going to say, and it does say something that, you know, most of the prime ministers we've seen in Doctor Who since this time have been mostly under a Conservative government and mostly a shower of bastards, haven't they? I'm thinking Children of Earth and so on and so forth. So after that, we cut all the way back to Jackie's flat where she's being interviewed by, and again, this is, I don't like that they do this, that we first see the police officer by a slow pan up to make sure that we get in that he's a rather rotund gentleman, because I don't really think it was necessary that we already have the farting jokes with the Slovene, but we've also got to have, they've all got to be fat people. I mean, they're aliens who have the technology. I don't see why it should be, why they can't have the sort of technology where it doesn't matter who they fit inside. It didn't particularly sit well for me, especially as someone who at this time who had his own weight problem as a teenager. It didn't make me feel too great.
Oh. Well, I thought they were just implying that all the Slovene, it was like a visual clue, so that we knew when John was going to be a Slovene more than anything.
I think that's definitely where it comes from. I just think my take on that there is just more accidental. I don't think there was certainly no maliciousness on the part of Russell T Davies writing this.
It can be looked at that way. That's all. It wasn't intended that way, but yeah, it was just like the mass of the Slovene has to fit inside a big enough sack. Yeah, really, but kind of. I mean, they don't do that with Zygons, do they? Zygons are taller than Huey McPhee or whoever it was.
So, and but I didn't know
his name from Crossroads. Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't put your name. I'll cut that out.
Layered.
Start your point again, Grant.
Starting with what they should, speaking of cutting things out, they definitely should have cut out the farting whilst trying to save the world, and the silent but deadly joke. I mean, Lord God Almighty, I hate that.
Yes. Too many now.
Yeah.
Really.
I'd just be repeating myself, like they would be. But, I'm curious, Grant, to know how many farts there were now.
I will say, I mean, sadly I have, and if I'm going down, you two are going down with me with this. So, I did this for the good of the podcast. So, just a few final points. I mean, I really like the Slovene, savouring the Slovene reveal for the cliffhanger. Because I thought at this point we'd already seen a little bit of Claw, but we only see them in their full majesty as they're revealed in 3 different locations around the story. And I think it goes on a little bit too long with Joseph Green managing to laugh slowly for about 5 minutes. But I think it's a really nice trick to have them revealed in the cabinet office, revealed in this little meeting with the Doctor, and revealed to Jackie. So all of our principal players in this story are experiencing it at the same time. Rose is experiencing them at the same time as the Doctor is.
Yeah.
But I do have to ask, how did Jackie not notice what seems to be a Pink Floyd light show going off in her living room?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, she stood there making
because
tea.
the telly was on.
Dramatic license again, I'm afraid.
What gets me about that cliffhanger is I thought, that's really good cliffhanger. It's like, it's the same thing happening in three places, but it shows you the scale of it then, because it's happening all over the place. I know it's literally only those three places. But my problem with it is, roughly 10 seconds after we get the cliffhanger, we get a trailer that reveals everybody's fine.
This is my note. I do have this. It's a big mistake to show the next time the trailer straight away. And I remember this. I think it even made it onto Points of View, because for the rest of the series, they do actually switch the trailers for two-parter episodes after the credits.
Yes.
But I'm fairly certain it's
personally, I wouldn't show them until a couple of nights before the episode's going out. If you're gonna completely flatten a cliffhanger like that, I would leave it. But because the cliffhanger is a trailer in itself, isn't it?
Yes, I guess the trailers. I mean, by putting them at the end of the credits, if you wanted to switch off to avoid it, you could just switch off. So I think that's a better happy medium.
Yeah,
that's true.
Fair compromise.
And just that separating. But it's literally. It's like, oh my god, what? Oh, they'll be all right.
See, that didn't really bother me, because you always know they're going to be all right.
Yeah.
I did take the point that other people didn't like it, and I think they did the right thing by moving the trailer back to the end of the credits.
Yeah. I think it's a real shame, because it was the first cliffhanger we got, and we weren't going to get that many. We knew it weren't serialised, it was one-off episodes. This was the first time we had a cliffhanger, apart from sometimes pre-title sequences were cliffhangers. But I love cliffhangers, and I was really annoyed with that. I've got over it since, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, my thoughts are more or less the same as yours, Grant. I've written the triple cliffhanger, but very drawn out.
Yes, I mean, I do have to say it is drawn out, especially with Joseph Green's maniacal laughing. He's doing it very slowly for about 5 minutes as we watch this rubber monster try to force its way out the top of someone's head.
Yes.
So,
quite
it's very old Doctor Who that everyone has to stand around waiting for the baddie to point a gun at them.
Yeah.
It has that same.
I'm waiting to fall over here. Please shoot me.
Yeah.
What do we think of the unzipping effect?
It's weird because sometimes when they can be bothered, like with the police officer in Jackie's flat, they bother to put an actual physical zip on their forehead. But I watched it the other times, especially when it's Margaret Slevine doing it. She's pretty much just drawing her finger across her forehead, implying there's a zip, and I'm guessing that's just to save time on the makeup budget, or putting a zip on their forehead.
It smacked of them sort of running out of time, I think, to come up with a consistent effect that they could keep adding, because it happened so many times, which sort of undermined it a bit as well, I think.
I quite like the effect. I found it quite sinister with the light bursting out of the crack. But as soon as I'd seen the Slevine, I'd lost interest in it. It was like, it's kind of like, I'm glad they didn't show us till the end of the episode, because at least I got one episode. But when I knew what they were going to reveal, I didn't find them monsters very impressive, to be honest. They were too. The faces were too comical and childlike, and the long arms and the big belly, and I just found them cartoony. I'm
going to say my thoughts on what I think on the Slevine for the next episode, but broadly I agree with you there. I've got a lot to say about the Slevine and the design of the Slevine. Yes, so I sat through this episode with my Word document in front of me, and I made a note of how many times by my ear a fart noise appears in this episode. So I'm going to go to you, Matt, first, and we can play this higher or lower. So how many do you think appeared in this episode?
27.
27.
Oh, I think it's much
Graham,
lower.
higher or lower?
I think it's much lower. I'm going to go 18.
18?
And I think that's quite high as well.
I'm going to have to give it to you, Graham, because it was 15.5.
15.5, it was half a fart.
There was half a fart. I'm counting, to be technical, when the police officer is in Jackie's flat, he has a dicky tummy make a rumbling noise.
Oh, don't count. That's a dicky tummy.
There's something brewing in there. But no, it was
I still maintain that those first two parts were funny. I quite enjoyed them, even knowing what was coming. But by the end of the episode, I was like, that's enough. I mean, 15 parts is too many parts.
If they
In
hadn't,
45 minutes. It's
if
one
they
every
hadn't
3
pretty
minutes.
much reused, if they hadn't pretty much reused the same noise for almost all of them, maybe. But it's that very whoopee cushion kind of noise to them.
I just don't like windy stuff, full stop. It never amuses me. But what does amuse me is noises that accidentally sound windy.
Yeah. When you sit down on a squeaky
yeah.
chair.
Yes.
I like the sudden surprise and embarrassment parts when people aren't expecting it. Those are the ones I like. They make me laugh. I am quite young in my brain.
I just don't like to think about it, full stop, really.
I would try it and hold them all in.
It's one of my only prudities, if you like. If that's a word, is it a word? It is now.
Prudishness.
Prudities.
Prudities.
Prudities, like crudities, but with a P.
Which is a word on this part.
I mean, I'm sure we've invented plenty of new words with like some of the concepts we've come up with. And so that was our discussion on Doctor Who, Aliens of London. As ever, I have been your Who host, Grant, and with me is Graham.
Goodbye.
And Matt.
Bye.
Next time, we'll be covering the second part of this story, World War III.
The power station, Abel's report.